Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Wicked Rule by K.I. Lynn, narrated by Alexander Cendese and Carolyn Eve. Then, 10 months ago, the woman beneath me burned, hot and wet. Each moan from her lips, each gasp as I drove deeper into her, sent a jolt down my spine. Finding myself looking down into the irresistible eyes of the blonde siren was not the outcome I had expected when I went out for drinks with my cousin to one of the posh clubs that he owned. I didn't pick women up often, and when I did, I certainly didn't take them home. Well, not home exactly, to a hotel I owned. A few hours earlier, I'd begrudgingly stepped across a threshold and into the cesspool known as a nightclub. Immediately, my skin prickled, and I fought the urge to turn around and retreat to my sanctuary. But an arm dropping down onto my shoulder halted me. "Don't even think about it, cousin," Reese said, pulling me through the crowd and the sea of gyrating bodies. The music thumped loudly as we passed the speakers, making my head pound in time. "This isn't necessary," I said as we approached the velvet rope at the base of a set of stairs, where a security guard kept watch. "Good evening, Omar," Reese said with a jovial smile. The guard smiled back. "Evening, Mr. de Loughrey," he replied, then unhooked the rope and moved aside. "Have a good time." "That's the plan," Reese called back as we ascended the stairs to the VIP section. After a long, hard battle of a week, all I wanted to do was sink into my bed and not move for a few hours, but, as usual, my wants were never a consideration. "Relax, we're here to enjoy the evening and maybe the company of a lady or two. Maybe 3 if we're lucky." Club rats were not my taste, but that didn't mean I couldn't enjoy the view. We entered the private space filled with couches and a table hidden by large, heavy curtains. Shortly after, a barely dressed waitress came in and took our order. "Would you relax?" I narrowed my gaze at him. Said the snake. "To the lion, if anyone is eating anyone, it's you." I blew out a breath and rubbed my hands across my stubble. "We need to celebrate." "It's been 6 months," I argued. He rolled his eyes. "6 months since you've been CEO, and not once have you celebrated that accomplishment." "It's hard to celebrate something that I always knew was going to be mine." "It's still an accomplishment. You didn't get it simply because you are the firstborn. You worked your ass off to climb to the top." He was right. From a young age, it was drilled into me that I needed to be the best, and not only the best would lead the de Loughrey legacy into the future. If I failed to rise to the top, the mantle would have been passed to whoever was worthy. The music drew me to the railing, and I surveyed the crowd, watching the pulsing lights beat in time with the bass thumping from the speakers. It was too loud for my tastes, but Reese was correct. I needed to celebrate. For years, I'd sacrificed everything in my climb to the top, to the point that the company was my life. Every minute of the day was spent thinking about the many workings of our near 200-year-old family business. We'd come out unscathed in the battles of the Industrial Revolution, survived the Great Depression, and exploded in the technological age. "Are those gray hairs I see and all that dark blonde?" Reese said, forcing me to acknowledge his close proximity. I narrowed my gaze as I turned toward him. His gray eyes sparkled with mirth. They were the same eyes as my younger brother Hamilton, the same as my father and uncle, as well as my grandfather. The eyes of a predator. An interesting observation. My own were blue, like my mother, warm enough to draw one in, cool enough to give one pause, and calculating enough to frighten even the strongest of constitutions. No more than those cropping up in your dark locks. You need a haircut. Reese ran a hand through his hair, which seemed a few weeks past the point of needing a trim. "All the better to be gripped and tugged on when I'm between a woman's thighs." A notion he wasn't incorrect about. My scalp tingled with the desire for just that. "I bet we could find something pretty to top your evening off with." It would be easier to simply call Bridget or Antonia. The 2 women were often called upon as dates to events or for an evening when I was in need of relief. "Where's the fun and excitement in that? The thrill of some nimble, nubile young woman to warm your cock?" Sadly, his mere description awakened the craving for all that he depicted. "Where do you find the energy?" "For starters, my brain isn't hardwired to the company 24/7. Second, I don't waste all of my excess energy in the gym. Third, I enjoy the hunt. A hungry cock will do whatever is necessary to dive into the wet warmth of young tight pussy." "You do realize you're starting to sound like Hamilton?" He shrugged. "I'm not as, virile as he is. My appetite is more refined. and I don't pursue it every week. Besides, the brainless bimbos he usually beds hold little appeal to me. I prefer the chase. I'm here to relax, and nothing is more relaxing than coming into a woman's mouth up here with hundreds of bodies mere feet below. I'll take that under advisement." He sighed and leaned against the rail. "If you don't want to put forth the effort, just tell them who you are. I've had women clamoring over each other to get on my dick after they heard my last name. Everyone knows the Loughrey name. We're a fucking American icon." Before I could compose a retort, the waitress arrived with our drinks, and I gladly took a few hard sips of the amber liquid. As I did, I watched as a woman with short blonde hair stepped off the dance floor and headed toward the bar. She seemed a bit out of place, which caught my eye. While most women were in tight, body-hugging, bust-enhancing scraps of fabric, the skirt of her dress fluttered behind her. It was more the dress of a garden party than a night out. The deep navy contrasted against her pale skin, and something white danced across the fabric, breaking up the monotony. No one followed her, and she found an empty seat at the far end of the bar. As I conversed with Reese, I periodically glanced her way, and not a soul ever approached. After finishing my drink, I glanced back to find her still on her own. All of Reese's talk of the chase, and a little relaxation from the liquor, had my mind spinning. "I'm going to go get a refill." His brow furrowed. "Cindy will be back in a few." I cleared my throat as I stood. "It's fine." He shook his head. "The bar is a mess. I wouldn't." "I'll return," I said, not waiting for a response as I pushed through the heavy curtains and made my way down the dark hallway. An odd thump of my heart pounded as I descended the stairs and caught a closer look at her. She seemed to be sipping a clear glass of something. Gin and tonic, perhaps? There was something out of place about her, more than her unearthly quality. She was dressed for the evening, somewhat conservatively compared to other women, with the skirt of her dress loose and hitting mid-thigh, and her inhibitions appeared not to have been taxed by alcohol. Her attention was on the wall behind the bartender, and my curiosity piqued even more, almost desperate to know what was on her mind. The curiosity drew me ever closer. "What's the celebration?" I asked. The words were out before I even realized I'd leaned in. She jumped and turned toward me, her brown eyes wide. I usually wasn't attracted to women with short hair, but the long pixie cut seemed to suit her. High cheekbones, large eyes, flawless skin, and perfectly pink, kissable lips were featured on her oval face. "Forgive me, I didn't mean to startle you." She blinked and smiled as she shook her head.
"No, I'm sorry. I was spacing out. What was the question?"
"What are you celebrating?" She sighed and attempted a smile.
"It's my birthday."
I scrunched my brow. "Why do you look so down about that?" She stared down at the glass in her hand.
"Honestly, I'm questioning what the fuck I'm doing here."
I glanced around and took note of how she failed to follow, searching out no one. "Please don't say you're here alone." She looked away and swallowed.
"Everyone was busy."
I leaned back. There was something about her that drew me in closer, something that wouldn't allow me to leave her by herself, my little sea nymph, sitting on her rock all alone. I held out my hand. "Come with me."
"What?"
She looked down at my offered hand. A chuckle left me. "I have a table. We will help you celebrate." She shook her head.
"Thanks, but I think I'm just gonna go home."
"I insist." I gained the bartender's attention and called him over. "Yes, sir, what can I do for you?" "Can you send her drink up with a bourbon neat?" "Yes, sir." He took her drink despite her protest. "And whatever her tab is, deal with it." "Yes, sir."
"What are you doing?"
she asked with wide eyes. I cleared my throat and glanced down at my hand. With a huff, she took it, and I reveled in the warmth of her touch as she slid off her stool, her purse tucked into her other hand. Once she was on her feet, I slipped her hand into the crook of my arm and led her away. When we reached the staircase, the music lessened as we retreated from the speakers. The bodyguard standing there gave me a nod and moved to the side to allow us up. "What's your name?"
"Ophelia."
"Ophelia? That's a beautiful name. Mine is Atticus."
"Where are we going?" "The tables are down there."
She pointed over her shoulder, an edge of apprehension in her tone. Hoping to put her at ease that I had nothing nefarious up my sleeve, I gave her a warm smile, something few people ever received from me. "The VIP section." Her lips parted and her eyes widened. We finished the climb and moved into a dimly lit walkway with large, thick curtains on one side. Once we reached the middle, I parted the curtains and ushered her through. Reese's gaze was wide as he eyed the woman coming into the private space. "What's this?" he asked, his lips pulling up into a grin. I very much noticed the glint in his eye, and the "I told you so" smirk that formed.
Ophelia,
she said as she held her hand out. Reese, being as lethal as ever, took her hand in his and kissed the top. "What did I do to be graced with such beauty?" She quirked a brow at him.
does that line actually work?
I burst out laughing, surprising both of them. "I told you your lines are over the top, and here I am, proven correct." "What did he say to get you up here?" he asked her, then glared at me. "And my lines warm my bed every night I desire, without fail."
He didn't say much, just to follow him.
"So direct, Atticus, it's shocking." I narrowed my gaze at him as I sipped on the drink the waitress had set down. "I find speaking directly works." "Ophelia, answer me this. Does flattery not work on you? Atticus is quite brash and often called insensitive by women, and you have me curious."
It wasn't really words, but I'm also not sure I understand the undercurrent of associating me with him. Yes, he convinced me to come with him, but that doesn't make me his.
Reese leaned in closer. "Does that mean you'd be mine for the night?"
No.
I smirked at the lack of hesitation. She wasn't falling for him. "Why not?"
"You're shady as fuck,"
she said without pause. I couldn't contain my laughter again. What the hell was going on with me? Reese's confusion at my reaction was evident in his wide-eyed stare. "He has laughed twice now. I'm going to have to ask you to take him back down and return with the correct Atticus, but before that, why such a harsh comparison?" Reese's wounded pride was bleeding all over the place.
It's in your attitude, the vibe you give off.
"And by that you trust him more than me?" Reese was both seriously affronted and entertained. Given that I was known as the Wicked King, I found it interesting that she held even an inkling of trust for me. "She has good intuition. Lethal lawyers are shady as fuck." He narrowed his eyes at me. "Might I remind you that it is a shadiness you have used to your advantage more than once?" I tipped my glass to him. "True. However, we aren't talking about a business venture, but the company of a woman."
"What are you boys doing up here all alone?"
she asked, putting an end to our spat. Reese leaned back. "Trying to let loose after a hard week." I scoffed. While Reese was normally reserved and cutthroat, he also had a playful nature about him. He was more social than me, but I knew why he pounded back the drinks and why he wore a facade. I saw the dark emptiness, if even just a flicker. "What do you do, Ophelia?" I asked, curious about the little nymph beside me.
"Right now, I'm a waitress."
I'd hoped she'd be something a little more interesting to help explain her appeal. Still, it failed to tamp down my curiosity. "Right now?" Reese asked with a quirk of his brow. She nodded.
"I have a degree in biology and was briefly in pharmaceutical sales, but that didn't work out. I just haven't found what I want to do yet."
That was more interesting. At least she was intelligent.
"What do you do?"
she asked as she looked at me. There seemed to be a current moving that I hadn't noticed before, and I quite enjoyed the simmer of heat that pulsed between us. I glanced to Reese, then gave her a strained smile. I didn't want to tell her. It would ruin the atmosphere. I was genuinely enjoying our time. "I went into the family business. Boring stuff."
"Didn't have a choice?"
My jaw clenched. "Not really." "From the day he was born, his future was set," Reese said, covering the truth and redirecting her attention on the subject.
"And what about you? Lawyer, was it?"
Reese grinned. "Corporate lawyer." Nothing about his answer was untrue, just the omission of it being the family company.
"Remind me, is that better or worse than an ambulance chaser?"
she asked. Another laugh burst from me. What had gotten into me? I wasn't one to show enjoyment in anything. Something about my little nymph was drawing it out of me. Despite what she said, she was mine, if even just for the night. "You wound me, Ophelia." She smiled and shook her head.
"I doubt there is little that would wound you. What did Atticus call you, the lethal lawyer?"
"I do like them feisty." She shrugged, then turned to me.
"How about you?"
My heart thrummed roughly in my chest as her brown eyes bored into mine. "Feisty or not, it makes no difference. I'm enjoying your company regardless." She settled back against the couch, her shoulders settling under my arm. The current intensified, firing off tingles across every inch of her that rested against me.
"He wins."
Perhaps I would be taking someone home this evening.
Ophelia. The alcohol warmed me, but not as much as the man I'd inched my way closer to over the past hour. Despite the way the evening began, I thoroughly enjoyed myself with these two gorgeous strangers in a VIP booth at Angelino. It was one of the hottest clubs in the city, and I only came out on the invitation from my friend Jennifer, who then canceled on me last minute. Whatever, we'd barely talked over the last few years, but she saw a post on Facebook and invited me. Still, I came, using her name, which was on the list. I guess dating a professional baseball player had its advantages, and cutting the line of people hoping to cross the threshold. I had been 2 sips from walking out, ending the night early, when Atticus appeared beside me. His blue eyes held me in thrall, his voice on edge. And those were only the first 2 things I noticed about the man. There was a dusting of stubble accentuating his strong jaw, and he had a straight nose, perfectly styled light brown, possibly dirty blonde hair, with similarly colored brows that shadowed his intense gaze. His lips. Immediately, my body flamed red hot just imagining his lips ghosting across my skin. I forced myself to look away and focus on the charcoal-colored suit that hugged his body in the most perfect way. When I took his hand, I was pleasantly surprised by his height. At 5.5 feet tall, pretty close to 6 feet in heels, he was still inches above me. 2 hours later, I was as entranced by his eyes, his lips, and his body as I had been when I first saw him. His voice left me wet and wanting from the beginning. I'd just returned to the VIP lounge from a trip to the bathroom, where I'd removed my thong and shoved it into the pocket of my dress, preferring the cool air to the damp sensation. When I pushed through the heavy curtain, I was greeted by Atticus's warm smile. "You didn't run off." I quirked a brow at him. "Is that code for I should have left?" He stood and stepped toward me as I moved to the railing. Reese had disappeared while I was away, leaving us alone with the heavy crackling of attraction that pulled us together. I swallowed hard and looked out over the crowd, trying to tamp down the lustful thoughts I was having about the gorgeous man. My hips swayed to the beat as I let my mind go and lost myself. A gasp left me as my skin electrified, and I slowed the roll of my hips. Atticus's strong chest was against my back, his arms on either side of me, caging me against the railing. The warmth of his body muddled my mind. The heat of his breath against my neck, followed by the light brush of his lips and stubble, had me pushing back into him. "I don't do this, ever, but I have a hotel room a few blocks away. I would hate for the evening to end." He sat against my ear, his voice a low, gravelly tone, deep and rich, that sent shivers down my spine. Every word the man said held an air of power, and his voice projected confidence. I'd never had a one-night stand. Yet, with the tangible chemistry between me and the man behind me, I had a feeling that was about to change. It would be a first for me, I said as I arched my neck and leaned back against him. He let out a low groan before lightly nipping my neck just below my ear, sending a jolt through my system. "Is that a yes?" He rocked his hips against my ass, and my mouth popped open at the feel of his hard length pressing against me. I moved my hips, grinding against him for a moment before twisting to look at him. His eyes were dark, lips only a few inches away. Craning my neck, I nipped at his bottom lip, then ran my tongue against it to soothe the sting, loving the way his gaze darkened. "Yes." He reached up and gripped my jaw, holding me in place as his lips pressed fiercely against mine.
"Let's go."
Reese entered just as we were exiting, surprise on his face morphing into a knowing smirk.
"Have a good night,"
he said with a wink. "Good night. Thanks for the fun," I said as Atticus pulled me out and down the hallway. His demeanor was almost frenzied with the way he bulldozed through the crowd, but when we made it outside to the street, he relaxed.
"I didn't want to lose you,"
was all he said as he slowed to a more manageable pace. My hand was warm in his as we walked a few blocks down to Le Magnifique, a 5-star hotel that I could never afford to stay in. His touch was forceful in a desperate sort of way, one that fueled the fire inside me with each bit of movement. He couldn't seem to let go of my hand, and the farther we walked, the tighter he gripped me. Was he afraid I was going to change my mind? As if there was a choice in the matter. I'd never been more drawn to a man, nor had I ever been more desperate to feel one's lips or body on mine. Somehow, we managed not to maul each other in the elevator, but we were barely through the door when he pushed me against the wall, his lips crashing to mine. The fire that had started the moment I looked up into his sapphire eyes exploded into a raging inferno, burning every vein as my blood moved through my body. He held my jaw tight, his thumb and fingers digging in as he devoured my mouth, his other hand fisting the back of my hair, threading through the shorter ends as he tried to possess me. His tongue created a spiraling shock that moved through me, and I was trapped in the gravity of him too far to notice his fingers pulling at the tie on the back of my dress, until the top slipped down and fabric pooled low on my hips. A light pull at the zipper, and my dress was a puddle of fabric at my feet.
"No panties?"
he growled. "I lost them."
"Lost them?"
"Yes, they were wet from being so close to you." A groan left him, and the intensity rolling off him increased.
"Tell me why."
My fingers flexed against his chest, and I bit down on my bottom lip. "Because every word out of your mouth goes straight to my clit." His lips tugged up into a smug smile.
"You seem to have lost all of your clothing,"
he said, his gaze traveling all the way down, sending a blaze of heat across my skin as he went. "Your fault again. I think you wanted to see me naked." His hand slipped between my thighs, and I gasped as his fingers slid against my clit, then down until he had 2 fingers buried inside me. A high-pitched cry left me, my muscles tense from the sudden explosion of pleasure.
"I think you may be right. Do you want to know what I know?"
he asked. My eyes glazed over, lips parting as his fingers moved in and out, sliding across my clit as he did. "What's that?" He pried my mouth open and slipped his thumb in, which I instantly lapped at, earning a strained groan.
"That you will look exquisite when you come on my cock."
I reached forward and gripped his bulge, earning a low rumble from his chest, and a harder drive of his fingers. Fuck, he was thick. He tilted my head back, his thumb slipping from my mouth just as his teeth scraped across the length of my neck. Complete control was his, and it felt so good. "You know what will look great as well?" I asked. Each breath reached higher in pitch as he drove me closer and closer to orgasm. He kissed and nipped his way up to my ear before biting lightly on my earlobe.
"What's that?"
I turned my head so that I could get closer to his ear, and his hand dropped down to rest lightly on my neck. "My lips wrapped around your cock," I whispered, giving him a squeeze. He groaned, then bit down on my neck before his touch vanished from my body. A whimper left me, but when I looked into his eyes, the predator that looked back sent a jolt of excitement through my system.
"On your knees."
He removed his suit jacket before working open his belt and then his slacks. By the time my knees hit the marble floor, I was at eye level. It had been a while since I'd been up close and personal with a man, but I didn't remember ever being as intimidated before. My whole body flushed in anticipation, and I reached out. He was warm, heavy, and thick. I wasn't some petite little thing, but even my fingers couldn't encircle his girth. My pussy clenched in anticipation of having him inside me, filling me, stretching my walls. I looked up at his dark eyes that watched me. He reached out and gripped my jaw again before slipping his thumb into my mouth.
"Suck it, just like that,"
he growled before releasing me. Leaning forward, I ran my tongue along the underside of his shaft, flicking the tip before closing my lips around the head. I worked my way down, loving each sigh and low vocalization that slipped from him.
"You're right. You're a vision with your mouth stuffed full of my cock."
I released him and dipped lower, my tongue circling one of his balls before sucking it into my mouth. Another curse hissed through clenched teeth, and I repeated the action on the other side, as I pumped his length before returning to swallow as much as I could, starting at the head.
"Fuck, you're good at that."
He pushed on the back of my head and I choked, unable to go as far as he wanted. Another low growl vibrated deep in his chest, and he pulled me up to my feet. A gasp left me as he delivered a painful but pleasurable slap to my clit before he stepped forward and grabbed my ass. His fingers dug into my butt cheeks as he lifted me up, my legs instinctively wrapping around his waist.
"You have a fantastic ass. I'm going to enjoy fucking you from behind and watching it bounce as you take my cock."
"Promises, promises," I said before nipping his neck. A growl rumbled in his chest before I was shocked by a sting across my butt, before he started walking toward the bedroom. I felt the hot head of his cock tapping against me with each step. A few more steps, and my stomach flipped as we fell onto the bed. His lips smashed to mine, and I was lost in the intoxicating hunger with which he possessed me. He pulled back and I let out a whine, earning me another tap on my clit.
"You are a needy little nymph,"
he said as he pulled at his clothes. His tie went first, followed by his vest, dress shirt, and undershirt, before he finally removed everything from his lower half. The suit that looked painted on only hid the body of a god beneath the rich fabrics. Lean, taut muscles, strong, broad chest and shoulders, defined abs, and even that heavenly, groan-inducing V. The man was perfection of the male species. I reached down to pull off my heels, but his hand grasped mine, stopping me.
"Leave those on for now."
He gripped my breast, drawing my nipple between his fingers and tugging, making me cry out.
I like that sound."
He retreated again, before pulling a condom from the bedside drawer and putting it on. My thighs rubbed together as I bit down on my lip, entranced by the flawless specimen before me. I scooted back up the bed as he closed in, with strong...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?